This is a recording with Don McIntosh, and this is Dean Johnson that's doing the interview. And so we're going to do one question. Okay. How did you learn about the employment on the docks?
Well, my father started on the waterfront in 1948, so
48, eh?
he was on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
The night I was sitting studying for some exams at school, and they had a gang in New Westminster from Vancouver, and when the gang arrived in New Westminster, there was a man missing in the gang, and they couldn't find anybody. So the supercargo said to my dad, "Do you have any kids at home?" He said, "I got one kid, but he's just a little wee gaffer. I don't think he could handle the job." He said, "Well, bring him on anyway." So I was sitting there and the phone rang, and my dad says, "You come on down if you want a job." So I put these big work boots on and I went down there, and it was hand stow lumber, 1 inch, random length, random thickness, you name it. And you had to make the floor, try and get the floor level. And the first guy I remember working with was Danny Cole. And he was a Westminster member for years, and he was influential with the union. So that was my first shift, I remember.
And so that's how you got in it.
That's how I got started.
I knew you all these years, and I never knew that was how you got started.
And then when in the summer I worked for Bjornson Construction for $1.25 an hour. All right, maybe it was less than that. I can't remember now. But anyway, the odd shift, once I got my number, I'd go down to the hall. And when I saw a couple of paychecks, I decided to throw the books away in the manual laborer's job with my neighbor who was in construction and go on the waterfront. And so, because the money was certainly a lot better than that wheeling cement for whatever it was, 2 bits an hour.
That's what got me was the money.
yeah. And the conditions.
My first paycheck, wow. Because I was used to working 14 hours a day at the Royal Columbian Paper in New Westminster, and making $40 a week.
Yeah.
Then I got this $120. Wow. Those sacks. They aren't that heavy. They aren't that heavy at all.
But the waterfront was good to our family, and to me, I always appreciated earning a good living and having good conditions. And my dad before me, and my dad got arthritis when he was in his late 40s, and all his joints swelled up, and he couldn't do physical work anymore. So that's how he became a first aid man.
Oh, yeah.
And there's very few industries where if something like that happened to you, you would be in poverty because if you couldn't work, you wouldn't get the kind of money you got on the waterfront for.
No.
Yeah. So that was really nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked I was one of the last people to work under the old hand stow physical, longshoring.
Yeah.
Worked on that metal that they threw in the hatch, and one piece weighed 5 pounds, and the next piece weighed 100 pounds. And you were stumbling around there.
Yes.
And then I often, I just worked as a laborer for, the first 5 years, and then some of the guys started to get topside jobs in, and I was thinking, I was a little afraid of the machinery, but I was on the ship one day, and I liked the physical work. So I'd take the flour or anything. As long as I was getting paid, I was happy. So I was on this ship, and it was sending flour to India, I think, or somewhere. They'd load these ships right full of the flour. You remember that, didn't you?
Yeah, I remember that. Load them right up.
And here the guy, foreman, comes to me, and he says, "We need a winch driver," he said. "And you're the only member on the ship." Because most of the members and even a lot of the casuals wouldn't work that flour all the time. They'd only do it once in a while. But I would take that I was the only member on the whole ship.
Mm-hmm.
So he dragged me out of the hatch, put me on a winch, the old yo-yo winch, up and down.
Yeah, up and down.
So I kind of got a little practice on doing that, and but I went to Westshore shortly after that. That was in '71.
Mm-hmm.
So I never got a lot of topside work out of the hall, or the Longshore Hall in Westminster, before I went to Westshore Terminals.
Yeah.
But then I got lots of practice running machinery after that.
Tell us about the flour. How did they load flour in those days?
Well, they would make a little
From the
platform in the middle of the hatch or on your side of them. They would land the load down there. You take the slings off, and you were 4 men aside, and each man would grab a sack. And
how big were the loads?
they were about 5 tiers high, and there'd be 10 sacks to a tier, maybe 50 sacks on a load.
Yeah.
I never really paid. I don't remember. Do you remember, Dean?
I thought it was about 35 sacks to a load. Probably 7 sacks to a tier.
Yeah, maybe that would be more like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd floor off on, remember the old Liberty ships,
Yeah.
they'd floor off, just throw the sacks down. That was the easy part. Then when you got up to the wings, and you had to stack them up.
How did you get the load into the wings?
Well, they'd try and swing them in as far as they could get close to where you're working, right? So you just bring that, winch driver would bring that load down, you remember, and try and push it as close to the wings as they could get. And then 4 guys, you just attack the load, and 1 sack at a time.
Did you ever have
If you got
dollies?
real ambitious, you could pack 2 at a time,
Did you have any dollies down there? Did you ever work with dollies? And
Yeah, when we had those tanks we'd have to put the load on a dolly and
wheel it into
wheel it in. Yeah, that's
to
right.
make it
So
like
you
a
had to
railroad.
make a little track that was decent. Otherwise, you'd lose the load before you got to where it was going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it had to have a good driver.
yeah, good dolly driver.
Yeah.
And then when you worked the pulp, if you were really good on that.
On the lift, on
The dolly.
Dolly,
The-
yeah.
And
Well,
you
the
could
lift-
flip that thing right in place when you got
Right,
there. But
yeah.
if you didn't have the knack, the technique, you did a lot of work because you'd have to readjust
You got that
pulp.
bar and you had to
Big
put it.
big bale of pulp that weighed 375 pounds. You'd have to, and then we worked that the lead bars. They were 100 pounds each.
112 pounds of meat.
Yep, and that was another skill level. When you
Yes.
threw that lead bar down, if you could just throw it right in place, you could be really efficient. But then if you threw it and it went up the wrong way, or you had to throw it on its face,
Yeah.
with the backside up, because that's the way the wedge went on. You had to throw that just perfectly in place.
Yeah.
You could really produce then.
Well, 2 men to a load on lead. And I remember we could keep that hook going all the time. We could beat the hook.
Yeah.
They couldn't keep up to us.
It would come down in a bundle of lead. Now, how
45 bars to the bundle. I
Yeah,
remember.
45 bars in a little package.
Yeah.
But that was heavy. That's
112 pounds a bar.
That's 4,500
Yeah.
pounds.
And we would, 2 men.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, 4,500, 4,500,
45 times
bars.
100.
Yeah, 4,500 pounds. And that's 2 ton, a little over 2 ton, 2.5 ton.
Yeah.
And 2 men take that and stow it.
Yeah.
You'd wheel it into the wing where you wanted to go.
And then I was around when they first brought a forklift down in the hatch.
What did you think of that when you first saw a forklift down there?
Oh man, and that little guy that used to take the big steps, Paul, and his brother worked on the waterfront too, and he was the first guy I ever saw drive a forklift.
Paul was the first one.
My mom knew him. He was a Westminster guy.
Yeah. Not,
Can't think of his last name right now.
Paul. Yeah, Paul
Paul.
Lagasse. Legacy.
When he walked, he would take these big steps like this.
Yeah.
And he could
It reminds me of Kenny Smith.
yeah, like Kenny Smith.
Yeah.
I should have run that through my mind before we did this interview. But he was the first guy I saw on the forklift. And then I got going on the forklift, and that's one thing I did before I went to Westshore.
Well, you were a good forklift operator.
I could run it pretty
You
good.
could run it really good. You took to that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was good. And what other cargo did you stow? In the hand stow. What did you think of timbers?
Well, we used to go. Cliff Pelzer just about killed me over there at Fraser Surrey Dock on the
Tell
wheat.
me this story.
Because they used to pour the wheat into the middle of the hatch, and then these old ships, the wheat would shift back and forth if they didn't do something. So they would pour a pile in the middle of the hatch, and you took these sacks, and one guy held the sack, another guy filled it up, and then you switch back and forth. Well, I remember working with Cliff, and he was a strong man at the time, young guy, and he'd fill that sack right to the top, right, and you'd be putting in, before I had got it down, he'd have another one out there and filling those sacks and piling them up so that and spread them around so that the wheat wouldn't shift. Do you remember doing that?
I remember doing that at the old elevator.
The old, Fraser Surrey.
Yeah, the old elevator.
And the old elevator.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that was another thing we did. And then we used to go to Vancouver and work general cargo. And I did a couple of checking jobs in Vancouver before I went to Westshore. I wasn't too good at that. The mathematics wasn't my thing. But I didn't really know what was in, they sent to New Westminster for people.
And they
just
didn't
fill
pay you
jobs.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was always a checker in the hatch and a checker on the dock. So it was a double check. And it was a good thing because we were doing balls of twine or something. And you had to make sure that there was a certain number of balls of twine on that load before you left. And so you had to kind of keep track of all that.
Yeah, I checked it with something else. Well, one of the jobs that was interesting and that you should know about is a deck load, though. Tell us how did you do deck loads?
Oh, the deck loads. I loved that. You get your ring gear on, and once they got out of the hatch, they'd start and they do timber. Well, we did. Remember the big timbers we used to have all around? Some of them
14 by 14.
by 14.
Yeah.
And you roll them over with a good, and the secret was to get a good PV with a sharp point and a good thing to turn it.
Yeah, I've talked to guys through the years. They don't know what a PV is.
Yeah, to roll that. So when you got a hold of that, it dug right in. Yeah. And you roll that onto the roller, and the way two guys pulled, and the other guy. Now there was another thing with a skill level is to keep that roller just the right angle. So if you didn't have the right angle, it rolled off the roller before it got to where it was going. So you had to have a guy that knew the angle right from where you landed the load to where you were going with it. And another skillful part was butting out those things, because if you took the timber all the way down where there was a butt end where you were going to put it and it didn't fit, now you got to wheel it all the way back to the other end, and the struggle of trying to make it fit, and you find out it didn't fit or something. So you had to pick the butts on the ends, and some of the lumber jobs was the same way. A good side runner knew exactly what size length of board to pick so it would butt out the end of the
Tell me what a side runner was.
He was a more experienced member on the team, and there was 4 guys aside when I first started. How many men were on a gang?
12.
12 men.
4 guys aside plus topside and slingman.
4 guys aside, 2 winch draggers, a hatch tender, and 2 slingmen. So there was a side runner on each side, and he was usually the guy that kind of set the pace of what you were doing, and he was supposed to know what he was doing. And he was also good, like the Westminster or older longshoremen are really good. When there's a young guy came down the hatch, they'd explain to him what was safe, what wasn't. Right? They were really good at that.
They were really
They were
good.
concerned about
They kept us kids safe
Yeah.
from working.
Yeah.
And they told us, in my experience, all the tricks of the trade, you know.
That's right,
This is
yeah.
how you do this and get this.
Yeah.
They spent time with us.
And there was always a certain technique to everything you were
Yeah.
doing. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Now, how did you like the hall? And the way the union did things and how it was?
well, in a perfect world, everything would be perfect, but I don't
Yeah.
think that was the method of dispatch and the way things went at the Longshore Hall when I was first there was far from perfect.
Right.
You go in there, you might see a fight, and you go in the hall, and it would be full of smoke.
Yeah.
I really didn't like that. I was never a smoker, and it wasn't my favorite. That's why when I went to Westshore Terminals, I was so happy not to have to go and get a job every day like that at the hall. I was really happy working at Westshore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but my son is doing that now.
Yeah.
He's working on the waterfront too, and it's taken him 10 years to make membership, and he's had to
My
go to the
son, 10
Longshore
years.
Hall, keep his hours up, and
Yeah.
I'm sure the younger people today have it hard in different ways than what we did.
Yeah. Well, the younger people today, in my experience, talking to them, we did all the jobs, longshore. We did everything.
Yeah,
We did every job.
yeah.
The younger people, they don't have, they do one
They
job.
specialize.
And
Yeah,
that's it. I met one guy, and for the first year, he did labor job. After he got in the lift truck on the dock, that's all he ever did. He doesn't know how to load steel. He doesn't know how to do anything else. And he's a member, been down there
yeah.
over 10
Well,
years.
it's the same way in all the industries now that they hone in on a special section of it.
Yeah.
There's so much more productivity now than there was then. I mean, when you think of all the containers and all the machinery that runs out of the Vancouver and Westminster ports now, it's like Blake just finished taking his training on a rubber-tired gantry
Yeah.
because he was running bomb carts for 10 years.
Yeah.
Not all of the 10 years. When he first started, he had to work logs, and like you said,
Yeah.
he had to do some physical jobs. But then he got on bomb carts, so he did that for a long time.
He'd work 7 days a week in the bomb carts.
It was a good job. It was a lucrative job,
Yeah.
the bomb carts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You want to put the hours in and get money, you get the bomb carts,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
So he's the third generation
Yeah.
longshoreman in my family.
Third generation.
And then, my brother worked on the waterfront.
Yes,
for 10
I know,
years
Wayne, yeah.
Before,
Tell me about your brother.
well,
How he started and what he did with the
he started
waterfront.
before me. He started around the same time as Joe Briggs.
Yeah.
And they were good friends. And he got a foreman's job, worked with Doug Sigurdsson up in Squamish there for
But
quite a
didn't
few
he become a president of our local at one time?
No, he was never president. He was a business agent for
Business
a while.
agent.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought
Yeah.
maybe he was.
I think he was a business agent when he finally decided that the waterfront wasn't the place he wanted to spend the rest of his life. And he decided he would always love trucking, and he started his own trucking business.
Yeah. Well,
And he did. He's done very well over the years.
You know, some people didn't. I have two brother-in-laws who I started on the waterfront. I got him a job, and one of them worked 5 days, and that was it. 5 graveyard shift work, double time, and that was it.
They never come
And
back.
another guy, welder for Westshore and on the docks, and he never come back. It just wasn't for him.
Yeah, so the waterfront, I guess, is not for everybody.
Yeah, just and I was, I loved it. I enjoyed it. Everything.
Yeah, I thought the freedom of the
Yeah.
waterfront was another thing that if you were going to go on a holiday, you just phoned the hall and said, I won't be around for a month
Yeah.
or whatever, and because I'm going on a holiday. And so you better replace me with somebody, right?
Yeah.
And same thing at Westshore. We were a little restricted at Westshore.
Yeah, but Westshore, I have got to say, management in Westshore, in my opinion, was good.
Yeah.
There was the odd ones that, were bad, but I'd say 90% of the management at Westshore was good.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I have no complaints
I never
against
worked
them.
with many of the management there that were mad at you every time they came to work. No. They
And
were
I mean-
always quite pleasant, most
Yeah.
of them, and if you just kept mind your own business and did your job, nobody ever bothered you
No,
at Westshore.
nobody ever bothered you at all. I enjoyed
Now,
it.
I phoned Wendy the other day to get your
Yeah,
email, your
phone number.
cell phone number,
Yeah.
and had a little chat with her. She works in payroll. So everybody got along
Yeah.
good, the payroll department. It's like a one little happy family down there.
Yeah, it was. It was. You never know how I got down the West Shore the first time. Did I ever tell you that?
No, I never. I might have heard story, but I had it forgotten.
I just become a Christian, and I was working, and I had a mortgage payment coming up, and some other bills, and I was working out of the hall was down, trying, having shit, and I died in a stinkhole. So I'm sitting at the hall. So I say to myself, I say to the Lord, Lord, please get me a job. I need it for this,
You got to make your payments.
make payments, please. And bang, within 2 minutes, hey, we need a guy at Westshore. And I'm thinking, I heard all kinds of, what? No, I don't want to go to Westshore, Lord. No, not that. Because I was set up for observer's job. And I was dressed up, just, Well, then I said to myself, Dean, you prayed for a job. God got you a job. Take it. What are you going to do, slap him in the face? Say no? So, okay, I took the job. And I went out to Westshore.
Yeah.
Hey, and it wasn't as bad as all I heard.
No. You heard a lot of bad things
I
from
heard no
Langell
good things at all.
from Langell and
Yeah.
they come back with these horror stories from Westshore.
Yeah, they came back. So what is this? It wasn't as bad.
Langell
And I was a prima donna at that time, thinking,
yeah.
Jim Spur must have thought, what kind of a guy is this Dean? Anyways, he was my first foreman there.
Oh yeah. Bill Spur.
No, Jim Spur.
Jim Spur. Oh
He
yeah.
was the first one. You know what he did? And I just, when I think of it, how crazy I was.
And there's another thing about the waterfront that I was just
Yeah.
thinking about once. You said you're a Christian.
Yeah.
Joe Breaks is a Christian. I'm a Christian. There's all walks of life work on the waterfront.
Yeah.
You work with some people that might have got involved in things they shouldn't, in their own private lives and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole bigger picture is you work with all different walks of life when you work on the waterfront.
Yeah.
People from different
When
backgrounds and
yes. I had, my attitude was this. What you do on the outside is your business. When you're on the waterfront with brothers, we work together.
it's a job. That's
It's a
what
job.
it is. Yeah.
L.D. Bruin, Hell's Angel. What he does outside doesn't matter. He's working in a crew.
Yeah,
That's on the job he does.
Some media people want to paint us with tar us with the brush of the criminals.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot of just good, honest, hardworking people that
Yeah.
worked on the waterfront.
Yeah.
And it's been a good job, and will be a good job for a long time too. I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no, that's. So when the first time a posting came up there, a steady posting, I took it. And the guy said, "Oh, Dean, you're not going to take that posting. You're not going to go there, steady."
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, "Yes, I am." And I mean, it turned out to be one of the best decisions that I made in my life.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What year did you get that posting?
75.
Oh yeah. And then you stayed there from that
Right.
time on.
From 75 on.
Yeah.
So.
But you always went back to the hall and took a
I
job.
could,
once
oh
in
yeah,
a while.
yeah. Hey, I could have. I missed 2 years, which I didn't, in the late 70s,
Yeah.
and it was broken service. But if I had kept it up, I could have got a decent pension.
I never went back to the hall after I started there. So anyway,
Brian Ross just had it made. He worked there right through. And Brian Ross,
oh yeah.
yeah, he had it. And then he went on compost, so for both ends, his pensions kept going.
Oh yeah.
So when he retired, he had full pensions on both ends.
Yeah.
When he got off of long-term disability, and this went in, he was only going for his 8 years. And they weren't going to give it to him. BCMEA, and he says, well, I worked those and I want them, or I'll get a lawyer. They said, well, we're going to get our lawyer and check it out. And they checked it out and he got in touch with him and says, no, we can't give you 8 years. We have to give you the full 35. Because you're on long term. And
Because he was on long-term
yeah, so 35 from Westshore, 35.
But he is in bad shape too.
Yeah.
So.
No, he's in.
You can't buy your health.
No, you can't buy your health. No.
I'm thankful for good health.
Yeah. So,
For my age, I think I do pretty good for health. So that's good.
yeah, I mean, I was talking to him, I think, and in about 3 years, he was rushed to the hospital.
Yeah.
He came about 9 times by ambulance.
Yeah.
He would just collapse.
Yeah.
And
His son works with Blake. He's a really nice boy.
oh yes, he is really nice, and he's the opposite of Brian. But I mean,
Well,
Brian is nice, but I mean,
it just took
Colin
Brian a lot of
didn't
years
wanna-
to grow up. Eh?
yeah, but Colin doesn't do drugs. He didn't want to, any of that type of stuff. My
Right.
dad does it, and he saw the effects of,
He saw the effects of that.
and he was nothing to do with it. You can't talk him into it. How did you, when you can tell me the changes? Did you see any changes from the time you started on the waterfront?
Oh.
to you retired?
There's been a lot of changes over the years, hasn't there?
Yes, there has, and so they want to know about some changes.
One big change for us was, of course, the working on the Sabbath.
Yeah,
And the waterfront never worked on the Saturdays or Sundays. Because the ship could just sit and wait.
yeah,
But then when, the productivity, the world
yeah.
industrialization going, and it just kept the momentum going, and eventually they found out they had to work the weekends.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so that was kind of hard on the people that wanted to go to church on Sunday.
yes,
Oh, I think
that's good enough. Well,
church on Sundays. So
you want to know something? We really got fed a bunch of crap on that. Working the weekends in the world, what we're saying, needed it, and they can't do that. Because you know something, I went to Halifax. They still only work the one shift, and they don't work Sunday, and they don't work days.
today, you mean?
Well, this was about 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But still, 10 years ago, we'd been working the weekends for years.
Yeah.
And they had...
Well, that's it. I think like Halifax would be a smaller port maybe than Vancouver, is it?
Yeah, it's a smaller port.
In more closely.
They take the overload. They take the overload from New York, but New York can't take. They take.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's the way it. So anyway, that was a big change where you had to be working 300.
a big change.
365 days a year
and 24
Saturdays,
hours a day.
Sundays. Yeah, and then my dad's a good Christian,
Yeah,
But some of the guys would confront him and say, "Well, what's a good Christian doing working on the Sabbath?" Well, my dad had the right answer. He says, "Well, if I book off on the Sabbath, I'm forcing some poor guy to work on the Sabbath, aren't I?" I thought he had the right answer.
yeah. But what other changes did you see in the gear, or did you?
Oh, yeah. Well, even changes at Westshore, the machinery became more sophisticated, didn't it, with the stacker reclaimers? And
Yeah.
when we first started there, we had this single arm reclaimer and MX machines, and
Right.
it had a cat with no cab on it. You came in looking like a black man.
Yeah. and you had to have that little.
All you could see was your teeth when you came into the lunchroom, white teeth.
I
They were
remember.
black.
I remember that the cat had a little starter motor to start the cat first. Had to start that motor. And then,
Yeah, the little pop motor, and then
Yeah.
you got that pop motor going, and it had a gear that
Yeah. You
so
pull it.
the compression didn't go
Yeah.
until you pulled it into gear, and then like it would turn the engine over without compression. And then
Yeah.
you pull that clutch, and that would set the compression, and then the diesel engine would start.
Yeah.
It was a very positive system for starting it, though.
Yeah.
They say in the north, where it got really cold in the past with some of the old cats, that they had troubles with the electrical start.
Oh yeah.
They like to stick with the old one because it was more consistent.
Well, one of the things that changed was the gear. I mean, I remember when we started it. We started out with a big gear with 3-ton gear. That's all it could pick up was 3 tons.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if you wanted to get bigger gear, 5-ton gear was like, oh boy, that was,
Yeah.
you know, like the Samson post was 5-ton gear.
Yeah.
We thought that was something. And now they lift up, you know.
Oh yeah,
That
especially like the gantry that Blake's
Yeah.
working on. I don't know how much they're lifting
50-ton or something.
every
easy.
time, all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah, and the old standing gear on the ships.
nobody knows how to set gear anymore.
Oh, that was a skill in
That was-
itself, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A
to set
good
that
hatch
gear.
tender knew exactly where to set
Right.
that
Right. That
gear, so
yeah.
it went right out on when you went out on the winch. It went right to
right
the
down
spot
to where
down
you
on the
spotted
dock.
it, right in the dock, and
Yeah.
how to.
I remember setting gear and the boom coming down. They missed. They had
Was that
didn't have
when
enough
Wilson got
wraps
killed?
around the thing when
Yeah.
they pulled
Was-
on the
Was
top
that
of the gear.
Wilson come?
And
that hurt?
the boom came down. Everybody went tearing off. Nobody got
Nobody got hurt.
Nobody
Oh.
got hurt because we were all standing in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's what the old timers used to teach us. Don't stand down there in the bite.
Yeah,
Always
don't-
stand back
Yeah.
if we're doing something,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
But he never had enough rats on
Right.
the niggerhead or whatever they called that.
Yeah.
And it started to go, and he lost momentum.
And the guy that was holding the, what is it, the pin that, you know, when it wraps around,
Yeah.
he had to hold the pin up and drop it.
Yeah, but you didn't want to hold that pin up. That was a dangerous thing to do.
Right.
You wanted to leave that, and if it did go, you don't drop it. That's what killed
Wilson.
Mr. Wilson,
Yeah.
Gordy, and
Yeah,
Gordy's
Gordy,
dad,
yeah, Gordy was on the
because he
ship.
dropped it and it busted that thing and something hit him.
Mhm.
I that's the story I heard anyway. That how he got
Yeah.
killed.
Talk about, did you ever get hurt on the job?
The only time I ever had a problem was with my back. And I was working on, that's another thing we used to work on that I'd forgotten about, is the frozen down in the freezers.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they had those great big boxes of fish.
Yeah.
And I had all this long underwear on. And I'm picking up these, you doubled up on them, but they were 400-pound huge boxes of fish in the freezers.
Yeah.
And I bent over to pick that up, and boy, I just went down like a sack of potatoes. My back was just something went out in my back, and I've always had trouble with that same spot in my back, but I got over it eventually. But it was hard on your body, you know, all that kind of physical work in the past.
Yeah, it was hard. You know what? Well, doing the actual loading and unloading the frozen fish and stuff wasn't bad for me. But for me, it was putting the beams in. You only had about a foot to stand on around the hatch, and it was
Right, that's straight way down there.
way down there. You had about 7 decks, or 6 or 7
Yeah,
decks. It seemed
yeah.
like.
And then we used to get up and put those little hatch covers on
Yeah.
that went between the beams.
Yeah,
Boy, if one of those slipped off there, you were gone.
you were going. I don't know. Just sort of, you know, that's the only thing I didn't like.
Yeah.
You know, really.
Oh, and you used to go down open ladders into the hatch.
Yeah. Yeah. Ted Phillips saved my bacon, saved my life. We had 3x9s, about 20 feet long, I guess, or something. And we're going into the wing, and there's an open hatch, little hatch in the wing.
You're
And we-
working in the wing and the
yeah,
open hatch.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But we slowly, we float off and it became level. We just, and I'm backing up and I went down the hatch, but I hung on to it. And Ted Phillips held on to his ends and shoved it so that it went against my chest, the 3x9. And so I couldn't go down anymore and I had it like this. And he came and got me out. But I don't know how far
kept
down.
the leverage on you
Yeah.
so you could get out.
I could get out.
Wow. So you backed into that.
Yeah, I just
Hole.
just stepped and fell in the hole.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
if Ted Phillips had let go, then it would have come down. I wouldn't have, but he didn't. He held on and put it down, and then he
Yeah.
held on. Well, let me get out.
Yeah.
You know that. And so, any big accidents or any accidents did you see when you were on all those years?
Not really.
No, same with me. I didn't really see.
I wasn't around when my dad was, being a first aid man, was
Oh,
around,
yeah.
and he had some very serious accidents happen.
How did he like being a first aid? Did he?
Oh, it was a good job, of course. He got
Mm-hmm.
good pay for it, and
Was he a good?
like I said, he
don't know
couldn't
if
do
he-
physical work anymore.
Yeah, was he a good first aidman? Did he?
Oh,
have
he
stuff?
was. They had to maintain an A ticket, first aid ticket.
Oh yeah.
And I remember him studying because that was his livelihood. He had to really work hard to keep those tickets up.
Oh yeah.
And once you had an A ticket, you got like a 3-year or 4-year reprieve
Mm-hmm.
before you had to take the first aid course again. So you always had to keep that ticket
Updating.
updated. Yeah, it wasn't that easy.
No.
No, but he always did his job very well.
Well, I know that. Who's that foreman at Fraser Surrey Dock who got killed, crushed by pulp? Innes. It was his last week before he retired,
Oh man.
and he got killed. But you know, the first aidman on the ship when he went out to get him fainted. And Shane was on the dock. He was a first aidman, but he was driving lift truck. They called for him to come up there
Yeah.
and do it.
I
So
think
that's-
he's the guy that went in, and the guy came in with a load, crushed him, wasn't it?
Yeah, the winch driver was bringing a load across and hit him in the Coleman, hit him.
Oh, that's what happened.
Yeah. And what happened, the winch driver had stopped. And the load just kept swinging. And it wasn't, that train stopped. And it was the train's fault that it stopped because he was bringing it over and bringing it up.
Yeah.
And everything just stopped. And so he couldn't raise it up any higher because everything stopped.
Yeah.
And then it just
Then it swung in,
Yeah.
that guy. Wow.
And Shane worked on him until he stopped bleeding, and then he knew he was dead.
My dad had a bad one at Seaboard Dock. A guy got caught between two of those little trailers, and it cut him right in half like that. He was out there trying to keep him breathing, but he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when you cut in half.
And there was another one. He was on a ship, and the end of the load, the hatch tender was standing on the hatch, and the load came like this, and it hit something, and it flipped around like that, and caught him between the end of the load and the hatch. Oh. And I forget who that was now.
But you know, with Longshore, in my experience, either you missed it you, or it killed you, maimed you.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't too many broken fingers. Or
I remember being on a ship in Vancouver, and you know how they had the tunnel down the middle?
Yeah.
There's one place you never stood, was when the load's coming like this, you never stood next to that tunnel.
No.
And I was stupid. I stood next to that thing, and I jumped out of the way. And just as I jumped out of the way, the hatch tender, or the winch driver, let the yard go, and whack. If I'd have been in there, I'd have been dead. So you remember things like that all your life.
All your life.
That would have been the end of me if I was standing there.
Yeah.
And I had been standing there just before that. I don't know why. Stupidity, right? Sometimes you do stupid things, not even, your mind isn't on what you're doing sometimes.
I remember when I was first down there, who was it? first remember what he said, the load's coming down this way. It doesn't swing this way because of he told me because of the gear. So he says, you don't stand where it can swing and hit you. You stand at the ends.
That's right, yeah.
And that's one of the first lessons one of the old, I don't know, I forget who was telling me that.
Yeah.
So I was down there, and I guess I was standing in the bike and he says, kid, come here. This is how, and he explained it to me, how the load comes.
Remember when they used to load wood in those little tanks?
Yes.
And they tipped the load right at the edge of the tank, and you were down in that little tank.
Yeah.
You had to sit in the corner and watch all these lumber come and spilling through that little opening up in the top of the tank.
Right.
It was pretty traumatic.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And you go up a tank until you couldn't fill it up anymore.
No.
Till you tip over and you couldn't pull the lumber down.
Yeah.
Just
So those were, the first 8 years where I was still got into that section of the hand stow physical work on the waterfront.
I think I was on the last hand stow on the waterfront. They had a hand stow. It was an afternoon shift, and there was a finish up, and they had package, but they had to have a hand stow on top to finish it up. And I remember I saw guys who were there, and I was woofing, and Jerry caught me, and I couple of I don't remember of us old timers. Let's go on hand stow. We'll just go do it and see what it is, And it was 2x6 and 2x8, and we went over there and we had a good time. We finished it up.
Like the old days.
Yeah, like the old days. It was fun.
Did you ever work the sulfur?
Yes.
That's something else I've forgotten about. You took this little board and they hooked the gear on the board.
Big board.
A big board, yeah, I guess it was. And the hard part was not the job. But when you got home, you had that sulfur embedded in your eyes, and you cried for a couple of days after that. Your eyes were just
red and water coming down.
Wow, that was terrible.
Terrible. Well, for me, that was almost as bad as hides.
Oh yeah, the hides. I remember going to Vancouver and working those stinky old hides.
Tell me about that.
And when you work that sulfur,
yeah,
the winch driver better not be careful when he's banging that. If he hit the hook or something and created a spark, it would go poof.
Yeah, and you couldn't see the flame.
Yeah.
I was surprised at that. Guys just said, "Hey, it's burning around here." It was one time we were in Twin Decks, and I'm looking around, and I couldn't see the flame.
Yeah.
Until I saw a little bit of blue. Oh. Then I saw it, but it was such a.
It wasn't an obvious.
It wasn't an obvious flame. It was a little blue flame.
Yeah.
And put it out. Yeah. Yeah. Leveling it off with packaged lumber. Oh yeah. And then we'd level it off that sulfur, and get the gear and hook it into the side. It was heavy gear too.
Yeah.
And leveling it off, and then putting the polyethylene on top, and it was so slippery, especially if it would have been raining or leaving a little bit of cold snow. Could hardly stand up on it. Yeah.
And then when we got to Westshore, it was different challenges there.
Yeah.
The challenge was to see if you could level that hatch, to finish the hatch nice and level with a nice level it off with a ship loader.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, that was it. Level it off.
Fill all the wings right to the top.
And just to see how we could do it.
Then you got on the dumper and you tried to see if you could troubleshoot that dumper yourself without calling a maintenance man in all the time, disturbing them, right? So.
Yeah, we used to troubleshoot the dumpers, and we used to we could do a lot of our own stuff.
Yeah, that's
in the beginning.
Yeah.
Then it got so electrical and complicated that
that's right. Yeah. And now they've kind of gotten away from. They put, like a lot of people suggested when I was there, they put an arm going into the dumper and an arm going out of the dumper at the other end, and that solved a lot of. That'll solve a lot of those problems.
Oh, yeah, that solved at least 20 minutes to half an hour of train of dumping.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That you haven't, how many times you get back and you add all that up the time, it's all, you take that 20 minutes. And you go to Westshore, it's a whole different type of
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed leveling it off the hatch to see how good I can do, just to get to the hatch covered in, so you don't make a big mess, and do it really nice. I used to enjoy that because I always thought, well, hey, I could see I'm accomplishing something.
Yeah. And with a shipbuilder, you always came out of the hatch the same way. So you had a method of doing it so that you did the difficult corner first that you couldn't see. You can do that first, and then you see if you could just finish that hatch off with a nice little windrow right down the middle.
You know who told me a knack of doing that and sort of told me how to do that? Bobby Allen.
Oh, Bobby Allen was probably good at that, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, Dean, I'll show you, this is really, because I was, doing this and wants this, and I was not, just knew
Bobby Allen's dad and my dad worked in the Yukon together on the gold dredges.
Oh, boy.
Before Bobby was even born.
Wow.
Or around the same time Bobby was born. I'm not sure exactly when, but his dad a longshoreman too, wasn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, so
They may have started longshoring together.
Yeah, they might have started at the same time. My dad started in 1948, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's gone now. So is Bobby's dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How many years did he spend on the waterfront?
Something, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'd have to sit down and find out the year he retired and figure that out.
Right.
But he put in 40 years probably on the waterfront anyway.
Yeah. You know something? I thought some other guys that weren't longshoremen but worked on the waterfront, either tug captains or in the tugboats or whatever. And really, every person I met that worked on the water made good money, made a decent wage.
Oh, yeah. They made a lot more than you would make working in a sawmill or canneries or whatever was going at the time. Yeah. But it was hard work.
Yeah.
It wasn't everybody that could do it. Especially in my dad's era. When you started then, the side runner was the boss. If you didn't tote your load, you were gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Get on the ball or hit the hull.
Yeah, that's it. And he worked he hit the really hard work. They're the ones that set the pattern for our industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were the ones.
We're still reap the benefits of what those people accomplished.
Okay. You were talking about, did you get any training, special training on the docks? Or how did you get to learn how to run the equipment?
Well, when I started at Westshore, there was no trainers. You had to kind of learn by the seat of your pants. Mm-hmm. But it seems to me that they did send somebody up. Just somebody in the gang would go up with you and show you how to do things. Mm-hmm. But that evolved eventually. They eventually had to hire people that would train you, and I think they still do today. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course I took training to run the crane.
Yeah.
It took me a few years to get used to that, running the crane. But once I got more comfortable with it, I really loved that job. Mm-hmm. And you did too, right?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, crane is, that was, the crane was, in my opinion, for me, for what I know and my personality, the crane was the best job for me.
Yeah. I was thinking if I had another career to pick, being a crane operator would be a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's very interesting. You have to be very concerned about the way the crane is set up and what you're going to pick up and all the things. Watch what you're doing. Watch you have a good signal man and watch for the wind. There wasn't too much wind and all this good stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that last crane they had was a beauty, that 70-ton Grove crane. Yeah. It was just like running a Tonka toy with a little handle there, and you turn it when you went to slew left, everything just worked like the other old crane was
Yeah.
physical.
More
Those big
physical,
long levers.
Yeah. And what I liked with the new one, you could set up the perimeters really nice. You didn't have to worry.
Exactly. Yeah. You had a little picture there, and you picked
Yeah.
what you were doing out of the picture and set it up according to what you were doing.
Yeah. The equipment on the docks really evolved. I mean, cars. Just think of what we did from the start, the first car. What did you do with the first car ship that you saw? And
I never worked any. Oh, the car ships that came into the old Westminster dock. You hooked these little hooks around the wheels. I'd forgotten about that job.
Well, tell me
and
about
then you put a pin in that held the hooks around the wheels, and you just shoved the cars out into the middle of the hatch, and they took them out on these hooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, it evolved some more, and then you had the cages.
Yeah, I didn't see that. The last time I saw the cars, and when I went to Westshore, like I said, I never went back to the hull.
Oh yeah.
So I never went and worked the car ships or any of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, the the stuff on the docks in New Westminster really changed. And you know what really bothered me was when New Westminster shut down all the docks on the New Westminster side.
Yeah, well, I guess real estate became so expensive that they couldn't afford to have ships sitting where there was $1 million a foot. I mean, maybe exaggerating real estate, and you've got a ship sitting there, right? I don't know if that's the way it went, but I'm sure that's...
Yeah, for years they still don't do anything with it. You go up there, there's still docks sitting there.
Yeah, that's true. I don't
They haven't done a thing with it. They kicked the King Neptune Cafe out of there and everything else. They were going to do this and going to do that.
All they did was the Westminster Quay.
Just went in. And all the rest, up the river, they never
It's
did.
just sitting vacant, isn't it?
Yeah, just sitting vacant.
Of course, you know, the smaller shipping industry is died a bit too.
Yeah.
The kind of ships you see at Westshore are the kind of ships that are the money makers of the shipping industry now, not the little.
I always thought that our local could have got something from the provincial or the city government for all the jobs lost, all the work lost. You know, at that time we didn't go for it, but we could have said, "Hey, look at
Yeah.
your guy's livelihood, you know."
Yeah.
But we didn't do it. Time to go or what?
Well, I have to go get my grandson at 2:30.
But it's 2:30 now, so.
Yeah. So I still have a few minutes though. His bill he doesn't really get out till about 25 to 3.
Well, were there jobs for women when you started down there?
Oh, there's another thing. No, you never saw a woman in the Longshore Hall.
No.
Yeah.
And now there's more.
But there's a lot of females on the waterfront now.
Yeah.
They need to earn a living just like the men. So
Yeah, but the federal government says you got to have them, and that's the way it is.
that's right. Yeah.
You know, and what clothing? Any special clothing you needed down there? Do you remember?
Well, I remember having an apron.
Now, what's an apron? How big was the apron?
It went down to about your knees, and you used to slide the lumber on the apron. If you had a good apron, you could, when you're sliding lumber one piece at a time, and you didn't want to get a pigskin apron because it wasn't waterproof, and all the lumber, the moisture would all go through it into your pants. You want to get a good thick, real leather apron.
Yeah, real leather one.
Yeah, and then I used to wear the Pure Paris work boots. Yeah, they Pure Paris went out of business too. That's gone because people don't need those big work boots anymore.
No, but they were good. I mean,
they were good, so comfortable.
Comfortable, and they lasted you a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know what what I liked about them. You could kick the butt in.
Yeah.
You don't kick it in.
You turn around, you give the board a kick from it just as you were leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And rain gear, you had to have good rain gear working on those deck loads and stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We got pretty spoiled at Westshore working in the cabs all the time.
Yes.
Didn't have to have all this gear.
I remember on the trains, not in the Westshore, but at the other end of the docks, we used to have, it's so cold, we put lights down by our feet if we were operating the winches to keep us warm and build those little
that was the hard part about working the topside, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In the winter and that, it was pretty cold. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's been good
Yeah.
to interview you. If there's anything else you want me to interview, tell me, call me, and we'll get together
Okay.
again.
That was nice, Dean.
Yeah.
I kind of enjoyed having a conversation
Yeah.
here with you.